The 14th year of Chenghua. Chapter 65. Getting slapped. Yin Yuanhua covered his forehead as he got up, wanting to swear but not daring to. If that wronged expression was pressed against the ground, he would be inciting the Jinyue's loud jeers. No one had the mind to care about him right now, though. This is the upper floor, village chief Lu said. It's this way. We went down from here last time. As he led the way in front, Meng Xi and the Jinyue lit up flame sticks, their surroundings instantly becoming brighter, allowing them all to see. The place they were now ought to be the left side chamber of a gate in the complex. Rotten wood was scattered all over the floor, as were many trunks, with porcelain placed at random, all of which had been half-coated in dust for a long time now. Having been subjected to years of being invaded, Eternal Deep was an imperial tomb that had right about been plundered into a sieve, this one glance around meeting with almost no intact objects. As the palace where Yingzong of the Song Dynasty slept after death, there had once been countless treasures of gold and silver and porcelain interred here, but now, only the delicate motifs and blue bricks near the archways and stone walls could testify that this place used to be glorious. What was especially unfortunate was that when that many robbers came over here, they would often only steal the treasures of gold and silver, tossing the porcelain and pottery figurines aside like worn-out shoes. It was to the point that nearly all of the latter had been destroyed in the process of tomb raiding, resulting in the floor being filled with desolation in the present, even more dilapidated than what was on the surface. At this juncture, though, few were of the mind to be concerned with such details. Tang Fan stooped over to pick up a thin white object from the ground. Upon brushing the dust away, he discovered that there was still some dried blood staining it. "What is that?" Sui Zhou asked, walking over after he noticed Tang Fan staring at the thing he held in a daze. He had already ordered village chief Lu not to go any farther, as well as for everyone else to take a careful look around. "A jade silkworm. This isn't from a Song Dynasty tomb and the blood doesn't look too aged. It ought to be something that Jian San's master accidentally dropped while he fled in too much of a rush." Upon hearing that, everyone circled around to see. Right. Jian San said. "My master and Fat Lu both said that when you go below the second floor, you can see a lot of treasures. I have some of my own guesses, but I need to go down further to know," Tang Fan mumbled. "There might be a secret hidden beneath the Song Dynasty tomb." The crowd looked at each other, completely ignorant as to what secret he was speaking of. Meng Xi let out an ah. "What about the corpses? If they fled from this way, there ought to be corpses left behind." He looked at Jian San, as if expecting him to explain. The latter stumbled a few steps back from his glare, stammering out, "This lowly one wouldn't know. My master only said that they ran the entire way and dropped all the treasures when they did. Maybe they dropped that." "Let's proceed," Tang Fan ordered. Sui Zhou nodded. "Be careful, everyone." When their group left the chamber, there was really only one path forward. The angle Jian San's group had picked out for the cave was indeed at a tricky angle. Just because there had been no traces of other thieves' caves close to this area didn't mean that it had been any less defiled by thieves, though. It could be said that the whole tomb was now only ruined walls, rotten wood, and porcelain fragments, any treasures it once had having been emptied from this place for over a century. Thus, when they came upon bits and bobs of golden animals and earrings and other such things sprinkled on the road ahead of them, they were all shocked. On top of that, they would occasionally step upon round golden beads, fossil coral ornaments, cloud-carved jade pendants, and so on. Jian San not being able to resist leaning over to pick them up was a given, but Tang Fan even saw Yin Yuanhua, as conceited and aloof as he was, couldn't resist quietly sneaking a gold bead into his pocket, either. In contrast, the Jinyue could still restrain themselves. Tang Fan grasped between his fingers an item he had just discovered under his feet, a silver bracelet inlaid with turquoise and mussel shells, pasted with gold leaf, and the supposition in his mind gradually took form. They left the side chamber and followed the passage to the underground steel pavilion in the main hall, then saw village chief Lu wind around to the back of the pavilion. "It's here," he shouted in happy surprise. "We went down from here the last time." The pavilion had been built as a beautiful sight to behold, being twice the size of regular steel pavilions from the surface. 3 stone stels were standing in its center that inscribed the achievements of Yingzong of the Song dynasty in his lifetime. Of course, since he had reigned for only 3 years, no amount of his accomplishments could compare to Renzong and Taizong's, so the word count had needed to be made up with drivel. They were all over generously engraved with flowing phrases of flattery and lavish rhetoric. Tang Fan only glanced over a few columns of writing before shifting his gaze away, looking towards the entrance pointed out by village chief Lu. The lower floor of the crypt was used to house the emperor's coffin and was also the heart of the underground palace. This entrance had been later excavated, not being the original one to the crypt at all, reportedly, because the original had many traps meant to deter thieves. A lot of later generations of tomb raiders had made different routes in. In the course of 100 years of successive waves of attempts, and judging from their unhindered path on the upper floor, there were likely not many mechanisms left on the bottom floor. Suizhou told everyone to have caution, after which village chief Lu went down in the lead. It wasn't that Suizhou wanted him to be cannon fodder, but that the man was the only one that had been through here before, and was the most familiar with the way compared to everyone else. The Jinyue had brought plenty of flame sticks and were not worried at all about them ever running out. Once everyone had stepped upon the blue bricks of the lower level, the firelight they held was enough to light up the entire empty space around them. "There's bloodstains over here," Yanli called lowly. Everyone's hearts leapt. Looking over to the place he was pointing at, they saw a puddle of dark red, nearly black, already dried blood spots, and several sheets of gold leaf that had also been darkened by blood. One Jinyue bent over, picked up a sheet and passed it to Suizhou. The other took it and gave it a look. "There must have been a fierce fight here, but all the corpses are gone. They might have been swallowed in chunks by the monster. Everyone needs to have caution and try not to wander off as much as they can. As soon as any weird sounds are heard, congregate together and prepare to use the hand cannons." It went without saying that they all felt that this place was eerie, Qian San'er particularly. With his own eyes, he had watched Li Kuei's group go down, then only his master and Fat Lu return, after which even those two had been lost inside the second time they had gone down, never to come back up. That had demonstrated something. The dangers here were certain to be far beyond anyone's original expectations and imaginations. Even Li Kuei and them hadn't been able to escape. For an amateur like himself, he dared not think about it further. He didn't even have any interest in the valuables spread out before him anymore, wanting to run back out to the surface and bask in the warm sunlight in one breath. How pitiful it was that he wasn't the one in charge, here. He could only brace himself and continue downwards. Tang Fan took the gold leaf sheet out of Suizhou's hand, then observed it for a time. "There's bronze script cut into this." Everyone's attention was drawn to him. "What's bronze script?" Suizhou asked. "It's also known as bell and cauldron script. Prior to the spring and autumn period, it was generally popular to make carved inscriptions in bronze ritual vessels, but it sometimes appeared on funerary implements, too. This gold foil should have been stuck to some object, then peeled off." The implicit understanding between him and Suizhou had already reached a set level, where they could hear one song and know their intent. The latter got his implication immediately. "You mean to say that these treasures we're seeing are not from any Song dynasty tomb but from below Eternal Deep?" Tang Fan nodded. "Qian San'er's master and Chief Lu have both said that there's another floor below. If I'm not mistaken, this should be a grave vault. By coincidence, Eternal Deep's location was picked out to be just above another, smaller tomb. Song emperors pursued the policy of burying sons of heaven in July, and site selection only happens after death. It can't be ruled out that because this vault beneath Eternal Deep had been buried too deep, and because the burial choosing for Yingzhong was too rushed, the overlap was not found. With as much said, he did not keep the listeners in suspense. In the spring and autumn period, Gong County was once a fiefdom that a Zhou emperor had conferred as the nation of Gong. These bronze script letters are a tiny bit hard to decipher, but looking at the quality of the burial objects, what's below should be the vault of a noble. Qian San'er had a sudden epiphany. No wonder my master said that there was a big heap of treasure down there. We were confused at that time. Everyone said that the Song tombs had been robbed clean long ago, so how could there be any treasure? They were even suspicious that they'd been hallucinating. So that's what it was. It may be, it may not. We still need to go down to confirm, Tang Fan answered. In times before the Qin dynasty, nobles would generally have chariot pits buried with them. The standards back then were very different from later tombs. While they talked, the group followed village chief Lu through an archway, then stopped inside a depression behind the crypt gate. Here. We found the entrance here last time. Chief Lu indicated the dark cave opening. Because we were about to run out of flame sticks and the hole goes in deep, we only walked it for a short spell, and were too apprehensive about going further down. Tang Fan crouched down and looked in. He found that this cave entrance must have started out as a tiny pit smashed into the ground after the stone wall fell off and landed. Later on, a blaze had occurred here, and then Jin soldiers had overturned the place looting it, the blue bricklayers paving the floor having long been lifted away. Who knew what menace to society had noticed that there was something odd beneath it and dug down, leading to this tunnel that went to parts unknown. It stood to reason that with how much of a hurry Qian San'er's master's group had been in, there was no way they could have discovered and excavated this passage in just 2 Shishans' time. The tunnel must have been there before them. But since that was the case, if there were treasures inside, why had they been waiting there for that group to find after they descended? If it was said to have been an illusion, that wouldn't make sense, as they themselves had picked up valuable treasures all along the way. They really did exist, and weren't part of the Song tomb's original belongings. What could be the explanation behind that? Tang Fan shared his own thought aloud to everyone. Regardless of the why, the goal of our expedition is to eliminate the monster that is bringing harm to this area, Sui Zhou said. Anything else is secondary. We can't get wayward thoughts because of greed and fail our actual job. The members of the Jinyue all agreed, but Yin Yuanhua felt some objection within his mind. In his view, were these valuables found and transported out, that would be called a great credit to the court, and, when the time came, if one could stash a bit of it away, they would have endless comfort for all their lives. As for that imaginary monster, he still hadn't seen even a shadow of it. Even if it was described like a real thing, he believed yet that it was very likely some people feigning the supernatural, using the titles of river gods and monsters to terrify the villagers out of coming near and thereby concealing the treasure. Sui Zhou didn't rush downwards, instead bringing people to carefully examine the lower level in a loop. Eternal Deep could be labeled as the smallest in scale out of Northern Song's tombs, added on with its baptism by soldiers, fire, and thieves, it was pretty much now an empty grave. Even the depressing wooden coffin containing Yingzong's body had been dismantled long ago, leaving only a few scattered scraps. It was likely that after those before passed through, they only left after there were too many things to take away. Even the emperor's bones were missing, to say nothing of the dragon robes and jewelry that had adorned him. This spectacle had been quite eye-worthy at the onset, but due to Tang Fan's statement, everyone became increasingly curious about the floor below. They hence circled the area in a rush, and once they discovered nothing suspicious whatsoever, they got ready to go down. Owing to his master's experience, Qian San'er had always had an indescribable dread towards this place. After witnessing that so many were uncomprehending while Tang Fan alone was able to describe the origins of what was below, he couldn't help but admire him a lot. He subconsciously followed by the man's side, not straying a hair too far. Now that he saw Tang Fan still squatting next to the coffin, he couldn't resist walking over, leaning down, and craning his neck to check things out. Tang Fan jumped in fright because of him but didn't reproach him but simply wiping away accumulated dust with his hands. Qian San's eyes widened. He saw that after the sawdust and grime was wiped away, a large pool of something dark was revealed beneath it. That's, he started, uncontrollably losing his voice. Blood, Tang Fan quietly supplied for him. Qian San's teeth couldn't help but rattle. Tang Fan just laughed, though. Don't be scared. After laughing, he stood up and walked away. Qian San kept staring blankly at the big blood stain. There appeared to be meat or bone bits on top of it that had mixed in some with the dust, making one feel terror when they thought deeply about it. Putting the fact that he had been a homeless wanderer since childhood aside, all he had ever done was petty thievery, never anything as vicious as murder and arson. The time he had followed with the gang to excavate the imperial tomb, he had been barred from coming in based on his lack of experience, thus taking back his fate, but now, he was getting the feeling that that fate might be getting reckoned today. Holding such an ominous premonition in mind, he got up with a sorrowful expression and followed after the crowd, descending into the hole that had quickly grown more terrifying in his eyes. Coming into this space, there was no natural light. Breathing felt more stuffy than when on the surface. The crypt wasn't big, but it also couldn't be described as small. Apart from their group, there were no signs of human around, their speech and footsteps echoing emptily, steeping in the emptiness of centuries. Whether caused by some past fire here or whatever, there seemed to be the faint smell of scorched earth in their nostrils. Adding that onto those bloodstains that might not be found, everyone had something weighing on their minds. The Chenghua were all right, as scenes like this didn't frighten them. Despite Yin Yuanhua's eagerness to establish merits, his face was left pale upon arriving at a place like this. If it were said that he had just been of the mind to bend over and gather gold beads while in the upper floor, he now became nervous, too afraid to lower his head and take a closer look, far and away inferior to Tang Fan, who was ever looking at the details. When seen in the eyes of others, they inevitably mocked him on the sly. The Chenghua hadn't taken too kindly to him to begin with. Upon seeing him so tense, Yanli got the mind to scare him, deliberately sneaking around behind him and abruptly clapping him on the shoulder. Ah! Yin Yuanhua jumped in fright. Once his eyes settled upon and found Yanli, he couldn't help but glare viciously at him. You have the nerve to dare frighten a higher official. I simply saw that you were stepping on something you shouldn't be stepping on, Sir Yin, Yanli said innocently. I thought to warn you. Yin Yuanhua lowered his head in a flurry to look, only to see that the place he had just been standing was clear. There wasn't anything there. Realizing that he had been tricked, he grew angry. Just you wait. So impetuous. I'll definitely denounce you to the Emperor when I get back. Silence. The speaker of that was not Yanli nor Suizhou, but Tang Fan. After he said as much, his face displayed look of listening to something. Seeing him be so serious, everyone quickly pricked up their ears and listened for a long time, to hear nothing at all. Yin Yuanhua had every reason to believe that Tang Fan was intentionally making things harder for him so that he lost face in front of others. He loathed the man all the more but was aware that he did not have the final say in anything right now, as the other was stronger in this situation. He had no choice but to keep his annoyance down. See how I deal with you when we get back, he thought hatefully. Tang Fan actually hadn't intended to mess with Yin Yuanhua. Right when the other had been loudly talking, he had heard a faint, drawn-out sound come from far away, as if something heavy was getting dragged along the ground ahead. However, after calming his heart and listening closely, the sound vanished, like it had been nothing more than his own misconception. Following this search of the lower floor and confirmation that nothing was here, Village Chief Lu led the way down the hole. Exactly how Village Chief Lu had said, the passage was a little long, nearly the same in length as the one they had just descended to get to the upper floor. This was probably the reason why the pre-Qin Dynasty noble's grave, hidden in the depths, had not been discovered during the imperial tomb site selection. "We're here." With the accompaniment of village chief Liu's voice, they all consecutively arrived below. What was beneath their feet was uneven. Stepping on it, one could clearly feel that the ground was not laid with bluestone bricks like the crypt was, but was just a run-of-the-mill ditch bottom. Beneath the firelight's illumination, the small space around them immediately became clear. Qian San'er gasped. "My master said that they saw a lot of treasure when they came down here. But where was that sort of treasures that was as far as they could see? Apart from the earthen walls on each side, there was nothing here. No." With some extra attention paid to the floor, puddle after puddle of deep red bloodstains could be seen, penetrating deep into the wall after congealing, appearing as unbelievably odd chunks of varying depths. Yin Yuanhua's face was overcast. "I just knew that a stupid thief wouldn't be credible." Qian San'er had really suffered a good deal after getting brought to the county capital by the Jinyue. Upon hearing this, he quickly refuted, "My master really did say that. Sir, this lowly one is already here with you. How could I dare to lie to you all? Maybe that the monster ate them." Village Chief Lu nervously asked. "A monster that ate people without spitting out their bones was already enough. If it ate treasure as well, what were they going to do? Call it a pixiu?" That remark was ridiculous to them all, but no one was able to laugh. The cramped and sinister environment, mysteriously vanished treasures, unpredictable dangers up ahead, and monster of unknown whereabouts all forced everyone's hearts to hang high. This side chamber wasn't sealed shut, at least, since there was a stone gate erected up ahead of them. Peng Qi had just walked over and tested it out. There were apparently rolling balls set in beneath to allow it to be opened with a forceful push. The door slowly came halfway open, a long and narrow passageway appearing beyond it. Its darkness was without limit, and without the illumination of candlelight, how deep it was could not be seen. "Brother?" Peng Qi had to softly ask. Everyone looked towards Suizhou. At this moment, he was their pillar of support. "Peng Qi, take two with you to scout ahead. You don't need to go too far. Once you confirm that there's nothing dangerous up ahead for now, you can turn back. Yanli, stay here and keep watch to provide support. If you come across any sort of unprecedented situation, run for the surface and don't worry about us," Suizhou ordered, voice heavy. Peng Qi affirmed, nodded at two of his subordinates, pushed the stone door open, and walked out. If not obstructed, the door would close on its own. Suizhou ordered it to be blocked so that it couldn't close, also making a mark on its outside. Not long afterwards, Peng Qi and those with him came back. "Brother, there's a fork in the path at the end of the passage, going left and right. We didn't go any further." Suizhou hummed. "Let's go on, then." Leaving Yanli here, he brought everyone else ahead. Tang Fan and Yin Yuanhua were walking at the very back, only to hear a Jinyue suddenly shout in front of them, "Something's up ahead." Soon after, someone else shouted, "It looks like a person." Everyone was alarmed. "Don't give chase," Suizhou commanded. When in completely unfamiliar place, hastily giving chase would only place one's own side in danger. While they were all subconsciously wanting to catch up and take a look, Suizhou's calmness undoubtedly dumped a basin of cold water on their heads. Even so, everyone's pace got a little bit quicker. Right then, Yin Yuanhua suddenly yelped like he had stepped on something, tripping and pitching bodily forwards. Tang Fan reached out to stop him, then was slightly put off balance by him, quickly supporting himself on the wall to stand steady. "Son of a whore!" Yin Yuanhua held his flame stick and lowered his head to look, only to see that what had tripped him was a human skull. Fearing the foreboding, he quickly kicked the skull to the side, after which he noticed that Tang Fan had never reacted, thus looking up at him. "Where are the others?" he couldn't help but cry out. "Why did they walk away so quickly?" Tang Fan creased his brow. His attention had just been drawn by Yin Yuanhua's stumble, yet in no more than a minute's time, the people ahead of them had vanished without a trace. Even the sound of their footsteps was gone. He went forward a little. Faint firelight illuminated the passage ahead, its end not too far away, but there was no fork in the road as Peng Qi had described, only one hallway to turn left into. Yin Yuanhua had evidently noticed as much, too. His complexion was a little white, voice trembling. "Where is everyone?" Tang Fan didn't answer, holding his flame stick up and preparing to move on. Not caring about his own dignity, Yin Yuanhua hurriedly grabbed the hem of the other's clothes. "Don't leave me." Master Tang was a little speechless, but he couldn't give thought to mocking him right now. Instead of going left, he stood in place, silent as he felt up the segment of earthen brick wall in front of him. What is even going on? Yin Yuanhua looked just as he was but couldn't make out anything. He was already kind of regretting coming here. How about, we go meet up with Yanli and wait for Envoy Sui's group to backtrack? We can't go back, I'm afraid. What do you mean? Go over there and try. Half skeptically, Yin Yuanhua held his light, backtracked for a bit, then suddenly cried out. Where is the chamber door? Why is nothing here? His free hand haphazardly felt the dirt wall, attempting to find the mark they had made before. Yanli! Yanli, he shouted, slapping the wall. Don't shout. Tang Fan sighed. We must have encountered a phantom wall. Phantom? Yin Yuanhua's face paled again. It's not a real phantom, just a mechanical application to the vault for the purpose of preventing thieves from entering at will. I've only read about them in ancient texts before, not seen them in person. When you stumbled, we probably unwittingly entered a run-off that led to our separation from them, else they wouldn't have gone so fast without waiting for us. The fact that you can't find the side chamber behind us is proof of that. What do we do, then? Yin Yuanhua shakily asked. How should I know? I'm not the owner of the vault. Let's take a good look around, there's always a way out. Don't scramble around. Even though he was trapped here with him, Master Tang wanted to laugh at the other's panic-stricken face. It had to be said that his mental faculties had already reached a certain realm where Yin Yuanhua to know what he was thinking right now, his heart would probably ring itself to death. Tang Fan didn't get to answer before a distant voice came down the left side corridor. Sir Tang. Sir Tang. Where are you? Yin Yuanhua couldn't help but be ecstatic. It's Village Chief Lu. We're here. A tiny light came from far to near. Not long after, Village Chief Lu appeared in front of them, out of breath, looking both shocked and happy. So here's where you two went, Sir Tang. What about the others? Where did they go? Yin Yuanhua asked urgently. Village Chief Lu gasped for breath, his forehead full of sweat. We were just walking for a bit when we realized that we didn't see you, so Sir Sui asked me to wind back around to look. They've found the area where the treasure is hidden. Follow me now, sirs. Yin Yuanhua didn't suspect a thing, thinking to go after him, only for Tang Fan to stop him. Wait. In the time span of that word, Yin Yuanhua turned to look at Tang Fan, while Village Chief Lu, who had been walking ahead, suddenly raised his axe and swung it at them. Because of the angle issue, Yin Yuanhua hadn't noticed, but Tang Fan had. He dragged Yin Yuanhua backwards, and right as the momentum made him fall, the axe missed his head by a slim margin. Moreover, owing to his excessive use of force, Chief Lu viciously bringing the axe down deeply embedded it into the wall, leaving him unable to pull it out for a minute. Taking advantage of that, Tang Fan dragged Yin Yuanhua into a run. Village Chief Liu's exasperated voice in the tunnel called out, but not for them to stop. It was to called out, catch them. Two people came out of nowhere and blocked their escape route, catching them by the shoulders. Not even needing to think about it, Tang Fan attempted to knee the man in front of him in the groin. That move might have worked on an ordinary person, but it was entirely useless against someone with martial arts training. One of the other's hands directly slapped him on the knee, and he felt a sharp burst of pain attack him, making his ability to react somewhat sluggish. In that short moment, he was already caught, the other harshly twisting his arms behind him as he cursed. "Bastard! You tried to kick my jewels." Yin Yuan, who had long been befuddled by the string of events, struggling wildly until he, too, was caught. "Who are you? How dare you? Don't you know that we're imperial ambassadors? This is treason. Unhand me. Unhand me MMPH. A sweatrag that stunk to the high heavens was stuffed into his mouth, making him gag until his eyes rolled back. Village Chief Lu came over like storm. Instead of caring about the noisy Yin Yuanhua, he raised his hand and slapped Tang Fan without another word. That vicious strength smacked Tang Fan's head to the side at once. His ears buzzed, a bloody stench slowly bubbling out of his mouth. Barely managing to tamp down his dizziness, he looked at the maliciously grinning Village Chief Lu. "It must have been hard for you to act for this long. I was wondering, when are you going actually reveal your true colors?" Chief Lu had been just about to take a dagger out and familiarize Tang Fan with it, but upon hearing that, his interest was piqued. "You knew I was a fake all along." The other didn't answer his question right away. A peasant born and raised in Luo River village would have been exposed to all sorts of farming skills since childhood. It would be impossible for one to not even know how to use an axe. The movements you used just now showed how unfamiliar you are with it, that you can't even control your strength when you swung it. You'd be hard-pressed to get anyone to believe that you're the real Village Chief Lu. Hearing this, Village Chief Lu actually grinned. That smile of his looked a little warped beneath the flamestick's light. Yin Yuanhua couldn't help but shudder, but the man paid him no mind, continuing to keep his attention on Tang Fan. "You knowing is useless. Now that you're both down here, be prepared to die here." He drew a dagger out of his sleeve, ready to stab Tang Fan in the heart. But, all of a sudden, a spectral crying noise came from far away. "Whoa! Whoa!" The sound was resentful and harsh, as if it held inexhaustible grief. Everyone's expression changed the second they heard it. "Vicar, isn't that thing locked outside?" How did it get in?" the man holding Yin Yuanhua trembled out. "Come on." Village Chief Lu grit his teeth, unable to put any more thought into killing Tang Fan. He ordered his subordinates to grab the two of them and run off. Their group bumped around as they fled. Village Chief Lu seemed to be familiar with this path, taking twist after wind until they ultimately turned into a stone chamber, then pushed the stone door shut. It wasn't until the wailing sound could no longer be heard that he sighed in relief. This chamber was clearly the central pivot of the grave vault. The area was much larger than the side chamber they had come to before, and dimly lit. Only the coffin in the center had a single candle lit upon it, its glow faint. It was unknown whether the body inside was still there. "I'd advise you not to kill us right now," Tang Fan said. "If I'm not wrong, the monster moved due to the scent of blood. If we die here, that will draw it over. When you're no longer able to get out, won't all of this have been in vain?" Village Chief Lu was panting for air. Despite the identity he was assuming, his actual self was still a pampered good-for-nothing, clearly not used to such intense running. He wouldn't have missed his head with that axe chop, otherwise. "You've always been quite intelligent, Sir Tang," he sneered. "Since you know I'm an imposter, why don't you have a guess at who I am?" Tang Fan watched him as he watched Tang Fan. That originally honest face was now inarguably sinister. "Truthfully, you played the part well, even imitating the local accent. But no matter how good the disguise is, a counterfeit will always betray signs in their mannerisms and speech," Tang Fan composedly detailed. Before Village Chief Lu could get angry, he continued. "When we entered, starting from the upper floor of the crypt, we found subsequent pieces of jade stones, gold beads, and other such valuables. You remember, right? Of course. Those were all strewn about after that gaggle of idiots died here last time. I specifically told everyone not to clean them up. What about it? That was the problem. After we came in, even Yin Yuan, who hadn't been able to resist sneaking a gold bead, to say nothing of Qian Saner and the rest. You, though. You were leading the way the whole time, yet were unmoved when seeing the treasures. If you were a rich merchant embracing a vast amount of fortune, or some young master accustomed to seeing wealth, that wouldn't be surprising to me. He smiled at village chief Lu. Instead, you're just a farmer that shoulders his entire family's livelihood. Your little brother said that your wife died young, you haven't yet remarried due to family circumstances, and you have no offspring. Would such a person really not be moved by the rich baubles filling the ground? Clearly, you were too anxious to drag us into the trap, which is why you didn't pay any attention to that detail, yes. Also, I remember what the old village chief said the night before he died. In the end, he kept saying that there were ghosts everywhere. I had thought at the start that he had only gone hysterical from fright, but after I thought more on it, that remark might have been referring to something else, because at the time, besides Suizhou and I, there was only you nearby. Let me come to a speculation. Did he know that you weren't his son? You worried that our arrival would cause your identity to be exposed too early, so you threatened him with his family's safety to force him into suicide. But why was he too scared to come clean to us? Did you have hold of some weak point of his? Village Chief Lu grinned creepily at him. Correct. They still believe that his grandson, my brother's son, is studying in the county when in truth, I had him captured long ago. Only the old village chief knew the secret. I told him that if he dared to expose my identity, the boy would definitely be meeting with misfortune before I would. For the sake of the life of his only grandson, he obeyed me perfectly. That makes sense, but what I don't understand is this: the old village chief was Lu Danio's father, so him seeing through your disguise is not surprising, but why did his mother and little brother not have any doubts? Village Chief Lu snorted. As you've said, my disguise is impeccable. His old mother is elderly, frail, and has bad eyesight. As for his brother, he's just a moron that can be swindled with a few words. No one in that family knew that I wasn't the real Lu Danio aside from the old man, haha. And on top of that, for his grandson's life, he instead had to help me keep the farce of his own volition. Tang Fan nodded. That's right. It's been a long time, Li Man. I presume you've been having a grand old time all this while. Him bluntly exposing his identity was unexpected. The other party was stunned for a good while, then reached out and grabbed his lapels. You still remember me? He asked, ferociously. From getting choked a little by him and also having his hands bound behind him again, Tang Fan was in a bit of a sorry state, unable to put on a calm air. He couldn't help but cough a few times. Why wouldn't I remember you? You swapped identities with Li Lin in prison, putting your own son to death yourself. Li Man sneered. If not for you, why would he be dead? If not for you, why would I not still be perfectly able to act as lord of the Li family, instead of now being forced to wander the ends of the world from your meddling? It was unknown what method he was using, but not only was his appearance completely unlike what it once had been, but even his voice was completely different. There was consistently a type of person in the world that was a complete failure. Instead of reflecting on their own faults, they would always shove mistakes onto others, forever believing that all of their own shortcomings were caused by outsiders. If you hadn't so cruelly murdered your own wife, you wouldn't be in your current plight at all. Tang Fan bellowed. She was wed to me when we came of age. There were some things that could never slip by her. She knew too much, and only the dead are the quietest, the man answered coldly. So, you plotted to kill her from the very beginning? Tang Fan raged. Everything you said before about her refusing to get a divorce was nothing more than an excuse. So what if it was an excuse? You're so angry, Sir Tang. If she hadn't been over 50 years old, I would be thinking that you'd had an affair with her. What about Li Lin, then? He was your son by blood. Even tigers won't eat their own cubs, so how could you have the heart to act against him? If I didn't use him to switch with me, I wouldn't be standing here and talking to you now, Li Man said calmly. It's fortunate that his mother taught him how to be overly filial since his youth, so that he read himself stupid. It made him easy to manipulate. That said, Lady Chen's already given me a son, so my Li family has someone to light incense. That son was a piece of rotten wood that couldn't be carved. There's nothing to be concerned about. Tang Fan felt that speaking of morality with a scumbag like this was practically a form of extravagance. If before he had said that the man had felt some remorse towards Lady Zhang's death in the Li residence, after their current reunion, Tang Fan saw only evil coming from him, devoid of any humanity. That was to say that in this man's mind, he now only valued Lady Chen and her son. As for Lady Zhang and her son, he had long cast them to the beyond. Before Tang Fan could speak, Li Man asked, "You still haven't explained. How did you figure me out?" "That's simple. Before we set out, you said something to the second Lu brother. Do you remember?" Seeing the other tilt his head in thought, Tang Fan nicely reminded him. "You told him to add blanched bok choy to a stew for when you came back." Li Man frowned. "What's the problem with that?" Tang Fan smiled. "There isn't any problem with it, but the term blanched is obviously not a part of the village's local dialect in that context. As far as I know, though, Jiangnan Suzhou region is really fond of the word. You took so many precautions but didn't expect that the way you spoke would betray you, did you? The Li family lived in the capital for a long time, but their ancestors were people of Jiangnan. Consequently, my own hometown is in Jiangnan, so I've heard it before, too." Li Man had considered that since the other end was trapping Suizhou's group, he would come over and kill Tang Fan and Yin Yuanhua. Because of his ample time and he had some questions he was wondering about, he had done this back and forth, but now that he heard this, he finally noticed that something was amiss. "Since you already had doubts, why did you still follow me down here?" Tang Fan had a strange expression. "What would be the use of catching you alone? Have you not heard this phrase before, if you don't enter the tiger's lair, how can you catch the tiger?" As soon as Tang Fan got that inexplicable look, Li Man had gone on alert. The very next moment, the two underlings that were holding Tang Fan and Yin Yuanhua cried out in surprise.